I've always lived in a golden cage. People call me a princess, but in reality, I'm just an object, a symbol of power. They look at me, but they don't see me. They only see a princess, a crown. In a small, beautiful kingdom surrounded by lush green mountains, there was a princess who was known and admired by everyone. Her name was Harow, the eldest daughter of King Aric, who had ruled the kingdom for many years and was loved and respected by the people. But Harow was not only known for her position as a princess or her stunning beauty. She was also praised for her kind heart, her compassion, and the love she always gave to others. The villagers often praised her, singing of her gentleness, kindness and beauty that seemed like a living painting. However, there was one strange thing that only Harow knew well. Despite being the princess of the kingdom and wearing the finest dresses, her body odor was unbearable, almost impossible to avoid. Whenever she appeared anywhere, whether in the castle or strolling through the garden, the smell followed her like a shadow, never leaving. This made Harow feel deeply insecure and hurt. Though she could not change herself, she dreamed of one day finding true love, someone who would love her for her kind heart, not for her appearance or the scent she could not control. But her years growing up were far from easy. As a child, Harow endured teasing from the other girls at court. They mocked her for being overweight, viewing her as something different. The jokes and strange looks made her feel incredibly lonely, to the point where she wondered if she truly belonged in this place. These pains grew over time. As Harow grew older, the situation not only didn't improve but became worse. The entire kingdom, from mothers to young girls, gradually began to avoid her. They didn't just whisper behind her back, but also hurriedly pulled their children inside whenever they saw her approaching. The friends she had trusted as a child, the girls she had confided in, turned their backs on her, no longer offering a greeting or showing any empathy. All Harow received was rejection. Despite this, Harow held on to a small hope in her heart. She dreamed of finding someone who could look past all of this, someone who would see the true person inside her heart. She longed to love and to be loved, but no matter how hard she tried, she was surrounded by nothing but loneliness. Every day, she could only stand by the palace window, watching the crowds joyfully dancing in the square, families happily enjoying life together. But all she could do was watch from afar, unable to join in, unable to connect. In those moments, she felt like a ghost, silently watching but unable to be part of the world she so desperately wanted to be a part of. Princess Harow was not only lonely in her emotions but also in her thoughts. She felt that no matter how noble and wealthy she was, there was one thing most important in life that she could not have: love. She couldn't change that odor, couldn't do anything to make others accept her. And in her darkest moments, Harow wondered whether true love even existed, or whether she would have to live her life in solitude. And so, the days passed by. When Harow sat by the window looking out at the lively and joyful world outside, she felt like an outsider, as if she didn't belong in this place. In her heart, a strong desire still burned, to find someone who wouldn't care about external things, but would love her for who she truly was. But the reality became even harsher when she discovered that, despite being a noble princess, she couldn't find a place where she could be accepted and loved. Would Harow be able to find that person? Would anyone be brave enough to look past societal prejudice and love her for who she truly was, not for the nobility she carried? Could love overcome everything, even the barriers that Harow herself could not break? These questions remained unanswered, and her journey had only just begun. On a summer afternoon, when the sun shone brightly over the small kingdom, the air was filled with energy and life. Harow sat alone in the palace, hearing the sounds of drums and laughter echoing from the village square. The people there were joyfully participating in the summer festival, dancing, laughing, and creating a colourful atmosphere that she had always longed to be a part of. She smiled sadly, knowing that it was a joy she could not have. But then a thought suddenly crossed her mind. Perhaps, if I stand from afar, I won't draw attention. I just need to watch, not participate, just to satisfy the longing of seeing others happy. With a vague mood, Harow quietly sneaked out of the palace, walking through the empty streets where the evening light gradually faded and the shadows began to take over. She walked close to the square, hiding in the corners, trying not to be noticed. Each step was like a battle against the curious gazes, but deep inside her, there was a burning desire to immerse herself in the joy of the people, to feel the life around her without being judged. She thought that if she blended into the crowd, no one would recognize her, a simple, overweight princess in ordinary clothes. But just then, a strong gust of wind blew through. The smell of Harow, the scent she had tried to hide for years, carried through the wind. Immediately, the joy and excitement of the crowd stopped. The drums and laughter ceased. Every gaze in the square turned towards her. Her lips pressed tightly, but she couldn't stop the overwhelming shame rising in her chest. She could clearly feel the discomfort in the eyes of those around her, the disdain and the rejection that couldn't be hidden. Gaping mouths, sneering looks, all seemed to fall upon her. People in the crowd began to wrinkle their faces, unable to hide their discomfort. A few turned away, quickly backing off, as if trying to avoid her. Harow stood there, her heart felt squeezed. She couldn't bear the ridicule in the eyes of those around her. She quickly turned and ran away, leaving behind nothing but disappointment. The crowd began whispering behind her, cruel words stabbing her heart. She could only run into the darkness, seeking a hiding place, somewhere no one could see her, where she could bury this pain in loneliness. Eventually, the overweight Harow found a thick bush where she could curl up and hide from the eyes of everyone. She sat there hugging her knees, eyes welling with tears. She couldn't believe what she had just experienced. Every moment that passed was a reminder of the loneliness she had always faced. Why me? She asked herself. But then, as Harow drowned in despair, another sound echoed, startling her. It was the sound of drums. This time, it wasn't the drumming from the square, but from a distance, unfamiliar, yet carrying a lively rhythm, unlike any she had heard before. Harow looked up through the leaves of the bush and, stunned, realized a figure was approaching. A young man, holding a drum, was walking cheerfully, his feet almost dancing along with the rhythm of the drum. Harow couldn't take her eyes off him. She realized he wasn't someone from the crowd earlier, but a stranger from a neighboring village. He continued drumming, seemingly unaware of Harlow's presence in the dark. Each beat of his drum seemed to make her heart beat faster. It wasn't a loud or uncomfortable sound, but a lively, joyful melody, something she hadn't felt within herself for a long time. The feeling of confusion in Harow grew stronger than ever. The overweight princess couldn't believe her eyes when that young man approached, showing no signs of worry or hesitation. He came closer, his face full of cheerfulness and optimism. When he reached her, he stopped, smiled warmly, and casually asked, "Why aren't you dancing with everyone? Everyone is having fun." His gentle words left Harow stunned, unsure of how to respond. She choked up, her eyes still wet, but she managed to speak. Can you smell me?" Her voice trembled. "Everyone avoids me because of my body odor. They don't want to be near me." The young man looked at her, still smiling warmly, and responded with true sincerity. "Don't worry about them. I don't smell anything. You're a great dancer, and I think you should dance with us. Have fun. You deserve that joy." Harow couldn't understand why he would say such a thing. Her eyes widened, a bit surprised, and also with a glimmer of hope. This was the first time in so long that she felt someone truly saw her, not for her appearance or body odor, but for the real person she was. She slowly stood up, a little unsteady, but then began to step out of her hiding place. The feelings of self-doubt seemed to gradually fade, replaced by warmth and encouragement from this stranger. Aric stepped closer, stopping when he noticed Harow. His eyes never left hers. Suddenly, he smiled and asked cheerfully, full of energy, as if there was nothing to worry about. "Why did you stop dancing? You dance so wonderfully. I love it." Harow froze. Her heart seemed to stop for a moment. She couldn't believe her eyes. How could this be? How could he stand there looking at her without any discomfort? She was so used to people avoiding her, avoiding the smell she could never hide. Her eyes welled up with tears and she trembled as she whispered, Can you smell me? Everyone in the village avoids me because of it." Her voice was weak, unable to hide the hurt that had built up in her heart. Aric didn't hesitate. He simply smiled, his eyes warm and sincere. "Don't worry about them," he said, his voice gentle but sure. "I think you're an amazing dancer. Forget all the mocking and dance for yourself, for the joy in your soul. Let the rhythm guide you." Harow was stunned. These words were unlike anything she had ever heard in her life. This was the first time she felt truly seen, not for her status, not for her title as a princess, but for who she truly was. He didn't see a fat princess with a heavy body odor. He saw her, a person with value, dreams, and a desire for freedom. Aric's words were like a ray of light breaking the ice she had built up for so long. The feelings of insecurity, shame, and the worries that had plagued her for years suddenly vanished, leaving behind a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. Harow didn't know what to do with these emotions. She looked at Aric again, his eyes full of warmth, with no judgment, just acceptance. In that moment, Princess Harow decided not to let her fears control her any longer. She gathered all her courage and stepped out of the shadows of loneliness and insecurity. Harow began to move gracefully and freely, letting the rhythm of the music take her into a new world. A world without judgment, without uncomfortable gazes. She no longer worried about what others thought. She danced for herself, for the joy in her heart. As she started to spin, her steps light but confident, Aric stood there, never taking his eyes off her, his gaze lighting up as he saw the change in her. It wasn't just a dance. It was liberation. A declaration from Harow that she deserved to be loved. She deserved the freedom to express herself. Her movements became fluid, full of energy. As if every step released her from the chains she had carried for so many years. Aric continued to play the drums, and his rhythm quickened, pulling Harow into a swirl of emotions and freedom. She was no longer the princess trapped in a shell, no longer the girl the outside world turned away from. She was herself, free, strong, and shining. Every movement she made was like a statement of her inner strength she had never acknowledged. That feeling made Harow feel like a star shining in the dark night. She wasn't just dancing for Aric, but for herself. She realized that the love and acceptance she longed for didn't come from outward appearances, but from within herself. Harow had started to love herself, love who she was, and no longer feared or worried about what others thought. When she finally stopped, breathing heavily but feeling content, Harow and Aric stood facing each other, looking at each other without words. They understood that in this moment, both of them had found a part of themselves they hadn't recognized before. Aric, with his warm smile and bright eyes, looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, and Harow, in her newfound freedom, felt her heart lighter, as if she had just stepped out of a long nightmare. This feeling, this joy, was something Harow never thought she would have. But today, under the light of a summer afternoon, in the embrace of music and Aric's encouragement, she had found a part of herself she had lost long ago. And she knew that from now on, she would no longer be afraid. Aric continued to play the drums, each beat ringing powerfully, pulling Harow into a magical world of music. At first, she felt like she couldn't keep up, her steps hesitant, her body a little stiff. But then, there seemed to be something in the rhythm of the drums that stirred her, making everything gradually change. Her body began to sway to the music on its own, each movement gentle, as if releasing something within her. Harlow's smile began to brighten, and the initial feelings of shame slowly started to fade. Aric didn't slow down. On the contrary, he played faster, each beat of the drum sending a wave of new energies into the air. Harow felt the encouragement in each rhythm, as if the music was urging her to be stronger, freer. She spun around, her feet barely touching the ground, and each step took her into a different world. It was no longer a dark kingdom filled with mockery or uncomfortable glances. She no longer had to worry about her body's smell, nor the whispers behind her back. Harow was now just herself, a girl soaring in the joy and magnificent freedom. And then, an indescribable feeling filled her heart. It was liberation, a feeling as if she had just removed all the chains that had bound her for so many years. She no longer felt ashamed of her body, no longer feared judgment. Harow simply smiled and danced, moving to Aric's drumbeat as if she had found a part of herself that she had been searching for all along. Each step of her dance was not just a movement. It was a step towards self-confidence, towards self-acceptance, something she had never dared to dream of. When they finally stopped, the whole space seemed to pause in a magical moment. Harow breathed heavily, but her heart was filled with joy and freedom that she had never felt before. Aric looked at her, his eyes sparkling like stars, and a warm smile on his lips. He gently said, "You dance beautifully, Harow. I'm so glad I met you." Aric's words were like a key that opened the door to Harlow's heart. She felt a surge of emotions rise up, as if all the pain, loneliness, and insecurities she had carried for years were undone in just one moment. Yes, Harow had found a part of herself, a part she had forgotten long ago, within her own heart. She was no longer a princess of a kingdom, no longer the girl cast aside by society. She was a real person with dreams, desires, and love for herself. This feeling, this happiness, was something Harow had never dared to dream of. And now with Aric, someone who saw her not as a princess but as Harow, she had truly been loved. She had truly found herself. Since that day, Harow and Aric met more frequently. Each meeting was a wonderful adventure, quietly hidden in dense bushes where no one could see them. They shared stories, laughter that echoed, and simple joys that Harow had never dared to hope for. Aric played the drums, the steady beat resonating like the heartbeat of Harow. She, with her gentle movements and freedom, began to dance along, letting go of all the worries, sadness, and loneliness she had endured for so long. She no longer felt trapped in a golden cage, no longer felt like a lonely princess within the cold walls of the palace. Because of Aric, a simple yet sincere young man, she had found joy, freedom, and love that she had always longed for. Time passed, day by day, and the bond between Harow and Aric grew deeper, from friendship to a profound, inseparable love. Each meeting made them feel closer than ever. Harow realized she had fallen in love with Aric, an ordinary man, with no power, no fame, yet he made her feel more special than anyone else. He didn't see her as a princess, didn't see her as something distant or unreachable. He saw her as a real person, with pain, desires, and dreams that she had never been allowed to reveal. That made their love stronger, sincere, and unbreakable. However, no matter how strong their love was, Harow knew they couldn't be together. She was a princess and Aric was just an ordinary man. Her family, society, and everything she had been taught would never accept a relationship like theirs. This realization only made Harow suffer more. She loved Aric, but she also loved her kingdom, her position, and the responsibilities she had to bear. A relationship like this would never be accepted, even though deep in her heart, she couldn't deny the love she felt for him. One evening, as the sunset cast a fiery red glow across the sky, Harow and Aric sat close together under an ancient oak tree. The air was still, only the gentle sound of wind rustling through the leaves. Aric, with a serious yet determined look, suddenly took Harlow's hand, making her nervous. "Harow, I love you," he said, his voice full of sincerity with no hesitation. "Do you want us to be together forever? I want us to marry and build a happy family no matter what the world thinks of us." Her shock was immediate. Harlow's heart seemed to stop, and Aric's words hit her like a strong blow, making it impossible for her to respond immediately. The images of the palace walls, her family's expectations, the responsibilities of being a princess, all flooded back, weighing heavily on her shoulders. She turned her face away, not wanting Aric to see the conflict in her eyes. "Aric, I love you," she said, her voice choking, each word stuck in her throat. "We can't be together. I can't give up everything I have. I can't give up my kingdom to live a simple life with you. I can't do that." Aric looked at her, his eyes breaking with sorrow. He held her hand tighter as if wanting to pass on all the strength and love he had for her. "You can't give up our love just because of social status, Harow. We deserve to be together, no matter what the world thinks. You can't let anything but our love determine your life." His words were like a sharp knife cutting into Harlow's heart. She knew she was doing the right thing, but her heart betrayed her. She felt torn, wanting to be with him but knowing they could never have a happy ending. Tears streamed down her face as Harow turned away, unable to hold back the pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I can't leave it all." Her heart ached as if she had just given up the most precious thing in her life. But deep inside, Harow knew she had done the inevitable. A relationship between a princess and an ordinary man could never be accepted. She couldn't abandon her responsibilities just for love. Aric stood there, silently watching her, but in his eyes, there was still determination. "I will always be here," he said gently but firmly. "No matter what you do, I will still love you." But as Harow turned away, she knew that it wasn't only Aric who had to endure this pain. She too. She had lost the most important thing in her life, Aric's love, just because of the invisible barriers society and her family had set for her. One evening, as the sunset cast a warm golden light over the peaceful scene, Harow and Aric sat together under the canopy of an ancient oak tree, enjoying the rare closeness between them. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant colours, but somehow, all those colours seemed dull compared to the emotions swelling in Harlow's heart. Aric, the man she had secretly loved for so long, the one who had made her feel truly loved, was now holding her hand, his eyes shining with a strong determination. Suddenly, Aric turned to her, his gaze serious but full of affection. "Harow," he began, his voice deep and warm, as though he was about to say the most important thing in his life. "I love you. Do you want us to be together forever? I want us to marry and build a happy family, no matter what the world thinks of us." Those words hit Harow like thunder. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. The whole world seemed to stop, and all that was left was the sound of her heart racing. She looked at Aric, his eyes glowing with sincere love, but also with a hopeful look, as though he was opening a door to the future, a future she had longed for but also feared. Harow felt choked up. The words of rejection were almost ready to come out, but they were stuck in her throat. She looked down at his hand holding hers, feeling the warmth spreading through her body. But then, thoughts of her family, her kingdom and all she had built over the years rushed in, making it impossible to speak. "Aric, I love you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'm a princess. We can't be together. I can't give up everything to live a simple life with you." Each word she spoke was like an arrow to Aric's heart, but he didn't pull his hand away. He didn't turn away. He still looked at her with a determined gaze, as if he never wanted to give up on her. "You can't give up our love just because of social status, Harow," he said gently but firmly. "We deserve to be together, no matter what the world thinks. You can't let anything other than our love decide your life." His words pierced Harlow's heart like a sharp knife. She knew she was doing the right thing, but her heart betrayed her. She felt torn, wanting to be with him, but knowing they could never have a happy ending. Tears streamed down her face as she turned away, unable to hold back the pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I can't do it." Her heart ached as if she had just given up the most precious thing in her life. But deep inside, Harow knew she had done the inevitable. A relationship between a princess and an ordinary man could never be accepted. She couldn't abandon her responsibilities just for love. Aric stood there silently watching her, but in his eyes, there was still determination. "I will always be here," he said softly but firmly. "No matter what you do, I will still love you." But as Harow turned away, she knew that it wasn't only Aric who had to endure this pain. She too. She had lost the most important thing in her life, Aric's love, just because of the invisible barriers society and her family had set for her. After rejecting Aric, Harow felt lonelier than she had ever felt before. Although the kingdom still admired her, still saw her as a beautiful and noble princess, inside, there was an emptiness that could not be filled. This feeling became even more pronounced when she realized that her true love, Aric, the man who had made her feel truly loved, had slipped away from her. Each day passed, and this pain gnawed at her heart. And every night, Harow was forced to face the darkness of her loneliness, with only the cold wind as a whisper of memories, reminding her of what she had lost. But strangely, amidst this pain, a change began to form within her. Harow started to realize that perhaps this was the time for her to find herself again. She no longer wanted to live in the perfect exterior that she had been taught, in the constraints of family and society. She no longer wanted to continue living in a golden cage, just to maintain the image that everyone expected. Instead, Harow longed for something more genuine, a true love, where she could be loved for who she truly was, not because of power, not because of fame or golden crowns. However, shortly after her decision, Harow realized another painful truth. The noblemen, the ones who had only seen her as a beautiful and perfect image, now began to vie for her love. Arranged meetings, extravagant gifts, sweet flirtations, all of it made Harow feel like she had become an object, a possession they could fight over. Their eyes were full of ambition, their smiles shining with insincerity, and every step she took became a race to win the heart of the princess. Harow could not avoid feeling uncomfortable and suffocated. Although she was the one expected and praised, all she felt from these noblemen was possessiveness. They didn't see her as a person, but only as a prize to be won, a pawn to elevate their status in society. She felt more isolated than ever, as if she were being swept into a vortex with no way out. Harow didn't want to become an object, didn't want her love to be exchanged for power and prestige. Yet deep inside, Harow could not forget Aric. He was the only one who had truly seen her, not as a princess, not as the perfect image everyone expected, but as her, a normal girl with a sincere heart, full of a desire to be loved. He was the only one who had accepted her when she had nothing but a sincere heart and fears she had never dared to voice. And no matter how hard she tried, no matter how many noblemen hovered around her, Aric's image always remained in her heart. Harow began to realize that not all the gold and power in the world could make her happy without true love. Aric, a simple man, someone who had nothing but a loving heart and perseverance, was the one who made her feel truly alive. Harow began to understand that her heart would never belong to anyone but Aric. And no matter how society viewed her, no matter how she was trapped in envious glances or judgments, the true love she longed for could only be found in his arms. She realized that a life without Aric, without true love, would no longer have meaning. Even if the nobleman could provide her with everything she needed in material wealth, respect, or power, it could never compare to the peace she once had beside Aric. And though she didn't know whether she could win him back, she had made one decision. Nothing would stop her from pursuing true love. After many months of inner turmoil, Harow had found maturity in her own feelings. The days spent facing loneliness and the long nights without Aric slowly helped her realize that there are things in life that nothing can replace. And true love is one of them. She realized that no matter how many people surrounded her, no matter how much fame and power she had, it could never compare to the truth in her heart. Aric's love was the one thing she could not give up. Harow decided to search for Aric. Even though she knew that things had changed after months of being apart, and he might no longer be waiting for her, she couldn't live with regret. All the confusion, all the fear, were pushed aside by a strong desire to find her true love again. She knew she was wrong in thinking she could live without him. She couldn't continue living in the shell of nobility and status. She couldn't go on without the love that Aric had brought into her life. The day they met again, everything seemed to suddenly return like an unfulfilled dream. The surroundings seemed to blur in Harlow's eyes as she saw Aric standing there like a figure she had longed to find. Her heart raced, caught in a rush of joy. She walked closer to him, her heart pounding, and when their eyes met, everything seemed to stop. Only she and he remained in that sacred moment. "Harlow," Aric whispered, his eyes filled with surprise and a touch of worry, as if he couldn't believe what was happening. "You really came here?" Harlow couldn't wait any longer. All the words, all the emotions she had kept hidden for so long, finally spilled out. "You are all I need, Aric," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I was wrong to think I could live without you. I can't live without you. I can't live without the love you've given me." She looked into Aric's eyes, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. She was ready for whatever came next, ready to love him truly without worrying about society or the judgments around her. Aric stood there, his eyes filled with emotion, as though he couldn't believe what he had just heard. A bright smile slowly appeared on his face, the smile Harlow had longed to see for so long. "Harlow," he said, his voice gentle but certain, "I've always loved you, and I will always be here, no matter what happens around us. You are everything to me." These words broke through Harlow's heart, making it impossible for her to hold back her emotions. She rushed into his arms, feeling the warmth, the safety that only Aric could provide. They held each other tightly, as if they never wanted to let go, as if nothing else in the world mattered. Only they, only the love they shared, were all that they needed. In that moment, Harlow felt an absolute freedom. She no longer had to worry about the outside world, no longer had to wear the crown of a princess whose heart didn't belong. Aric's love was the only shining star in her life. He had loved her when she wasn't perfect, when she was just a normal girl full of flaws, and it was that love that made her feel special, made her believe that no matter who she was, she still deserved to be loved. Aric gently stroked her hair, his eyes filled with tenderness and love. "I always knew you would find your way back," he whispered. "And now we will go forward together. Nothing can ever tear us apart." Harlow smiled, but the tears still flowed down her cheeks, tears of happiness and relief. Finally, she had found what she had always been searching for: unconditional love, limitless acceptance. The love Aric had for her wasn't a perfect love in the eyes of society, but it was a sincere, deep, and beautiful love. This was the love she had longed for all her life. They stood there, under the sunset, two people in love who had found each other, despite all the trials and the prejudices that society had placed upon them. In each other's arms, they felt the true happiness that only sincere love could bring. Harlow was no longer a princess trapped in a cold kingdom. She had become a woman loved for who she truly was. And Aric, the man she had always loved, had also found joy in her heart. They walked together not knowing what the future would bring, but as long as they had each other. The story of Harlow and Aric was not a fairy tale, but it was a story of love, of growth, of finding oneself in the simplest and truest things. Please leave your thoughts in the comments, share your feelings, and don't forget to click like if this story inspired you. If you want to hear more emotional stories and deep lessons, be sure to click subscribe to the African Tales Best channel and turn on notifications. We are here to bring you stories that will make you reflect and feel every heartbeat. Share with your friends and family, especially African Americans, to preserve our cultures. Let's continue writing your story, because everyone has a remarkable journey.